People across the state have been called on to conserve energy as demand for electricity surged. Temperatures hit record or near record highs in many parts of Texas. That led ERCOT, the state's grid operator, to ask Texans to use less power. ERCOT first issued a call to conserve last Sunday night. Then it happened again on Wednesday, that time with only a few hours' notice. It led to concerns about potential rolling blackouts, but power providers like Austin Energy kept the lights on. To be clear, what ERCOT issued is a conservation appeal. That's not an emergency alert, and even if we did reach the first emergency level, ERCOT still has other tools it will implement before turning to what they call controlled outages, better known as rolling blackouts. Those have only happened 4 times in ERCOT's history. That was in 1989, 2006, 2011, and then the February freeze in 2021, although those outages didn't actually roll. This time, Texans answered the conservation call. ERCOT tells us when the conservation appeal went into effect at 2 p.m. on Monday, 500 megawatts of demand dropped from the grid. That's about enough power for 100,000 homes. We have already surpassed ERCOT's baseline demand projection this summer, and it's only July. Right now, ERCOT only depends on historical data for its seasonal outlooks without accounting for the impact of climate change. Maggie Glenn shows us why some energy experts say ERCOT needs to change the way it plans for the future.
After the February freeze last year, atmospheric sciences professor Andrew Dessler and his graduate students started digging into our state's power grid.
We all lived through the blackout. It was really incredibly miserable. And I came out of that and I sort of thought, what's going on with the power grid?
He said he quickly found a problem and started his own projections. When giving its seasonal outlooks, ERCOT relies on historical data only.
The problem with that is that the future is not the same as the past because we're living in a world of climate change. I quickly realized it was going to be a big problem in the summer because climate change is making summers more extreme.
Dessler says his baseline projection matched up with ERCOT's this summer, which estimated peak demand on the grid would be 77,300 megawatts. But when you look at extreme scenarios,
their extreme scenario is more like 81 or 82 gigawatts. And we find that that's not nearly extreme enough.
His extreme projection estimated up to 86,000 megawatts. And we've already surpassed ERCOT's baseline projection this summer.
They've already hit 79,000 and looks like we're pretty close on our way to 80,000, if not more. And it's only July.
Leaving energy experts pushing for climate change's impact to be included in the future.
This is not politics. This is not a turf battle. We're trying to maintain the power supply for Texans who rely on it.
Maggie Glenn for State of Texas.
ERCOT stated part of the reason for the tight grid conditions was low wind power. Early in the week, wind turbines were generating just 8% of potential output, according to Bloomberg News. Some Republican lawmakers have pointed to this factor as a reason we should not rely on renewable sources like wind for power. But energy experts say it's not that simple, and shortfalls can be planned for by balancing other sources of energy.
We know that the wind generally doesn't blow whenever temperatures are this hot across the entire state. That doesn't mean that wind is not useful. When the wind blows, it produces a lot of energy at a low cost. And if you look at that over, a year or so, it does keep prices down, and it has kept prices down so far this summer.
An ERCOT report from 2020 showed that nearly half of the Texas supply of electricity comes from natural gas power plants. Wind energy made up nearly a quarter of the supply, followed by coal, nuclear, and solar power. The widespread power outages in the deadly winter storm of 2021 led state leaders to make changes. They pushed for new policies to improve communication and to encourage utilities to upgrade equipment. Governor Abbott said those changes are making a difference.
We've been through record after record of power demand multiple times already this summer, and every single time the power grid was able to provide power without any power going out from the ERCOT power grid in the state of Texas. And so the power grid is able to perform adequately or even remarkably well. To put this in contrast to the way things used to operate before Winter Storm Uri, there was not this level of communication with the public to let the public know what was going on. All of this was going on behind the scenes. We've just been more transparent. There's been no mandatory reduction of the usage of power. There's been no blackouts, just voluntary conservation appeals.
The governor is confident, but the appeals for voluntary conservation are raising concerns from other Texans, including Abbott's opponent in the November election, Beto O'Rourke. The Democrat posted on Twitter that state leaders have not done enough, saying, quote, Abbott wouldn't be repeatedly telling us to cut the AC in 100-plus degree heat if he had just fixed the grid. The grid could soon face more days of near-record demand. We're still a few weeks away from when Texas traditionally hits its hottest temperatures.
I promise you, you do not want this to happen to you.
Families of the victims in Uvalde are taking their stories to our nation's capital, the message they're sending to lawmakers, and how they're already making a difference.